There is a wonderful William James quote. It's act as if what you do makes a difference, because it does. When I was in second or third grade, and I still was in the heart of the many years, I thought I was the center of the universe and that everything revolved around me, and had not yet even begun to learn that that might not be the case, that it might be that other people were, in a very large sense, more important than I was, because what I saw and got back from them and what I could give, made my life better. But it took me a long time in a life of show business and so forth to begin to realize that. Anyway, in the second or third grade, I would be drawing with my crayon and my paper, and all the other kids would be doing, what they saw around them or what they knew from home. And I didn't do that. I drew houses on fire, and it consisted of a house with a roof, simple roof, and then I would scribble all over it, which was the fire. And it was from some place beneath my sternum, I think. It's that place where if you have some kind of maybe dysfunction at home, or at least, putting it in the nicest way possible, a passion within you that you have to get out some way, it was an expression of that. I also did snakes. I drew snakes at that time. Later on, I was in biology class, and I was given my frog to dissect. And I was supposed to isolate all the organs and do it sensibly, and do, like everything else I was supposed to do in school, do it in an organized fashion between the lines and everything. But I didn't really have the patience for that. What I ended up doing was struggling to get everything right, and then I couldn't do it and didn't want to do it, and finally it was the house on fire, and my frog became just all mush. And it was then that I realized that I was a little afraid that my father did want me to be in his practice. He was a doctor, and I one time went and saw him do a surgical procedure. A woman was very sick, and at least she was bleeding a lot and in a lot of pain, and it was scary. And I was leaning against a wall, watching him do this procedure to fix her up, and I remember my eyes rolling back, and I just slid down the wall. And so I knew at that point that I was probably not going to work out to be any good as a doctor. So then I got into theater. I went into local summer stock, and I went to college and became a theater major. And then I went to New York, and I got on stage, and I did a lot of work that way, and that kind of house on fire passion within me was kind of in the right place. And then I got a job finally in film in Hollywood, and a few jobs. And I remember looking at the Hollywood Reporter or Variety and seeing an obituary of a guy who had died at the age of 58. And at the time I was 28 years old, and I thought, well, that's not a bad run. 58 years old, that was at that time 30 years past the age I was then. I was 28. So I thought, that's longer than I've lived up till now. That's an eternity. And then time went on. I got to be 51. I remember waking up in the morning, I turned 51, and I remember hearing a voice in my head that said, Mr. Lenz was 51. And I began to come to grips with the fact that maybe as I sort of hoped or prayed or really tried my best to believe that I was immortal, that was not really the case. And then time got a little bit further along, and I quit acting around the age of 60 because I was only being cast as white old man functionaries, and I didn't want to be those guys, and I'd been writing all my life, so I thought, well, I'll just try to get better doing that, because I was not good at the beginning. And in the meantime, I started to paint. You can see some of my paintings over here. And my wife Linda said, why don't you, I like your little scribblings and drawings, why don't you do some more? And so I did. And I was able to do House on Fire painting and have some success with it. And the same thing with my writing. And I began to sell some things. I am not rich yet, but who's to say I might not get more toward being rich next year? And as I get older and I keep on having this sort of urge to create and this kind of passion for living and for doing the things that I do, including spending time with my wife and my children and my grandchildren, that it's a really pretty good deal. And that what I had thought was just a limited universe that was basically limited to me alone is not so limited after all. And that this great, big, wonderful, extraordinary world we live in, and beyond it, forget about it, or either going out into the forever galaxies or into a blade of grass. It's just an extraordinary thing. And so I think acting as if what you do counts because it does is really good advice, because we all have passion for this life. And as long as we have that passion and invest it every day, I think it really makes life worth living. And death begins to lose its power to frighten. And because as long as you're involved in complete passion in doing what you're doing every day, then you are. And that's what matters. Thanks.